Hey folks, Jack here from Peachy Guitars. Today's video is going to be a little bit of a different thing that you've seen before in the typical sort of Tale of Two Tones series. What I've been asked to do is sort of piece together a few of the EVH products that we've got in stock and sort of make a little bit of a themed video. However, as you know, of course, the circumstances are quite different with this one. We're still just weeks after losing Eddie Van Halen, so it's a little bit of a somber occasion, but I thought it'd be interesting to focus a little bit on some of the gear that we just happened to have received at the same time, and it kind of got me thinking of a different avenue to explore with Eddie's sound and Eddie's playing. So not only was he the guy to come up with a lot of these techniques and sounds that a lot of guitar players came to rely on, he also constantly evolved it. So what you see throughout the course of his career, from the very earliest days of Van Halen, when he was famous for having that brown sound, as it was known, which was literally a Marshall on 10. By the later stages of his career, right up to his death, his sound had evolved into this very different kind of a beast, where it was basically taking all those real push to the limits kind of sensibilities and constraining them a little bit, making them a little bit more practical, a little bit more digestible. And you only had to look at the trend of metal bands and really great guitar players that were using his products and still continue to and rely on his products for the core of their sound, to know that that worked. It really worked to bottle that electrifying energy that the first couple of, or the first era of Van Halen, if you like, had. As I say, this isn't going for Eddie's sound, but I want to use some of the gear that he either used himself or at least inspired, just to try and put across my own interpretation of that bottled lightning, if you like. Now, I will say that if you want more of my thoughts on Eddie's playing, and particularly his earlier tones, the early Van Halen stuff, then there is a video on my own channel, which will be linked below, that kind of detailed that. And that was more of the Frankenstrat into a cranked Marshall approach. But this, as I said, is very different. So what I'm using here is the new to us anyway, EVH Wolfgang Special guitar, which I've been waiting quite a long time to get my hands on one of these, because for the money that they are, they kind of just seem to land on exactly the right spot that I really like out of an instrument anyway. It's got all the innovations that Eddie worked on throughout the course of his playing career. You've got an EVH branded Floyd Rose bridge piece and tremolo system, for example. You've got the EVH detuner on this bridge as well. And of course, the Wolfgang model itself is Eddie's own creation. So this was really born out of him just having decades of learning what works on a guitar for him and what doesn't, and also how to satisfy some of those tonal demands that he was known to just constantly evolve with. So that's what this guitar is, basically. It's not the full-blown custom model or anything like that, but I think for a lot of players out there, if you just want to get into the vibe and the mindset of what Eddie had, this is pretty much the perfect testament to that. Because, as I say, a lot of the innovations are there, and most importantly, the tone and the comfort is there as well. So I'm playing this guitar with a few of Eddie's staple effects as well. I've got the EVH Phase 90, of course, on the floor from MXR. And I'm also using the EVH Chorus, which you'll have heard there sprinkled in the effects loop of the amp. And this was really, once again, something that came later in his playing career. For example, this Soldano amplifier was this is something that Eddie used in the early days, I think, before the inception of the 5150 PV amplifier, when he was on his journey to try and bottle that sound in a slightly different way and also push forward into a higher gain, more of a thumpy kind of tone. The Soldano is actually one of the precursors to that whole playing experience. So I'm using it, I think, as a pretty worthy substitute of the EVH signature amplifier. It does sound quite similar, and I think it actually sounds maybe a little bit more articulate than some of those amps do. So let me give you another example of that. I'm going to turn the chorus off, so there's no effects apart from the Echoplex preamp, which is hitting the front end of the amp. So that's all you're hearing in terms of tone shaping. This is what this mammoth tone sounds like, and you're going to tell straight away it's very different to the Eruption tone, the Ain't Talking About Love tone, all that sort of stuff. Very different indeed. Alright, so hopefully you'll tell from that like I said earlier on, there's a lot more thump to this sound. It's totally different than the real nicely sort of, the nice effect that you get from an amp that's just pinned and right on the edge. It's a different sort of sensibility. It's a lot easier to play this sound than it is that cranked Marshall thing, for example. And I guess that the direction that Eddie's music went, he just wanted to diversify a little bit more and maybe play around with some sounds that he hadn't literally technically been able to achieve before, and that's where amplifiers like this come in. And it's also where you start to hear the advent of the racks, which came around in the sort of mid to late 80s, and that's where the chorus came in, I think. And I really like the MXR EVH chorus, the 5150 chorus, because it doesn't do the traditional analog chorus thing. It's more of that sort of rack sound in a compact pedal format. So let me give you an example of what that's doing. It's actually not doing that much, but here's what it sounds like. First off, then I'll turn the chorus on. Not a great deal, right? So it just basically, I think, helps with the articulation a little bit. It means that every note has a little bit more presence, and really, you know, as much as the gear does help, obviously the magic was in Eddie's hands. The articulation that he had in his hands to be able to work with a gain sound like that with so much distortion and so many harmonics, and still every note that he played remained clear. Every note in a chord that he played rang out in an easily identifiable way. And it's kind of the mystique. And one of the best examples of that, to me anyway, with this kind of era of tone, was the Best of Both Worlds track, which, you know, I'll play an approximation for you. I believe that guitar was actually 57 Strat or something in the in-between position. So, you know, not the right guitar, but you get the essence of what I'm talking about here, the articulation in the chords. And it's something that I think is one of the most overlooked attributes of Eddie's sound. Let me give you a rough example. So you can tell, being a high gain amp, it doesn't clean up in the same way that the old Marshalls would do, but it's a different thing. It's still got this intensity bubbling away to it that I really like when you do back off the volume and just play a little bit softer. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, the thing that I think this rig really, really works for is, again, something that Eddie sort of started to do a little bit later in his career, and that is just tearing the hell out of the guitar with the harmonics and stuff that he would use. In the earlier days, it was a lot crisper. With this, it's a hell of a lot meaner. Let me give you an example with some wah as well. missed a few there because I am human, but you know, you kind of get the idea that the harmonics just want to leap out a little bit more with this sound. It's so mid-rich, and obviously it gave birth to the PV 5150 and later on his own brand, the EVH 5153 as well. And it is just a sound that so many guitar players adore because it literally allows you to just have notes fly off the fingerboard like that. So, you know, this rig is very different to some of the stuff you'll have heard Van Halen play, of course, but I think there are equally a number of people out there that are familiar with the later era of Van Halen tones, right up to pretty much present day. And this kind of setup really works for that kind of style. So, obviously, you know, no one's in the game of trying to 100% emulate the man, but in terms of just paying a little bit of tribute to him by understanding his mindset when it came to using these pieces of gear, I think is quite important and quite beneficial to a multitude of guitar players, whether you're trying to sound like the man or not. It just shows you that there's a hell of a lot to learn from Eddie Van Halen and all of the advancements that he made for the guitar industry. Okay, some interesting notes in there for certain, but I wanted to kind of get across the point that this new EVH Shark guitar is just something that's pretty cool. So this is obviously kind of paying homage to Eddie's famous Ibanez Destroyer guitar that he used way back in the early days, and he kind of chopped it up and sabotaged it himself basically, and that's what all this funky cutaway stuff is about. And it was just kind of testament to the nature of Eddie Van Halen, once again, of just finding stuff that maybe didn't quite 100% work for him, but then just butchering it into submission. And that's what this guitar really exemplifies very well. And I just think, you know, it's totally a world away from the Wolfgang that you'll have just seen, but it shows you how many facets there were to Eddie's playing. You know, I was kind of butchering some of the tapping stuff there, but this guitar, I believe, was used on the You Really Got Me solo on the first record, and you know, made a few other notable recording appearances. This isn't a 100% replica of the original guitar either, but this Shark model certainly takes a lot of inspiration from that guitar, and it allows you, I think, to explore some more of Eddie's rhythmic style as well, without having that tremolo getting in the way and causing some tuning issues and stuff like that. You know, this guitar is a little bit more solid in that regard, so you get to understand a little bit more and appreciate a little bit more the mastery of Eddie's rhythm playing, which to me is kind of my big fascination and love with him, is just what an amazing rhythm guitar player he was. So maybe you hadn't considered this kind of thing before, but if you want to kind of get some of the Eddie Van Halen vibe, obviously aesthetically, tonally as well, but in a different direction, maybe you're not interested in the Floyd Rose antics that he was known for, this is just another great, as I say, another facet to his playing, another weapon in the arsenal that was the great Ed Van Halen. So anyway, here's the new Shark. I think it's a pretty cool instrument. Coupled with the Wolfgang, they've got a very, very strong lineup of instruments for the remainder of 2020 and going forwards, I would imagine too. Alright folks, so I hope that you've enjoyed this little bit of a semi-tribute to Eddie Van Halen. And as I said before, there's a lot to learn. Whether you like that style of guitar playing or not, there's always little tips and tricks that you can pick up, and hopefully I've conveyed a few of those anyway. So that's it, really. If you want to find out any more information about these new EVH Wolfgang Special guitars, or the Shark guitar that I showed you earlier on as well, about any of the gear basically, it's all linked down below in the description. You can head to peachguitars.com to do so. Make sure you liven up the comments section below with some of your Eddie stories and just general tone ideas. I'm really curious to hear as many of these as possible. What did Eddie mean to you as a guitar player and as a musician? So that's it. Take care of yourselves, folks, and I'll see you in the next video.